Hey everybody, welcome back to Tech Talk Education. Dr. Heldman here. In this video, I want to walk you through how to create a custom PowerShell profile to customize the colors that you want on the profile screen and the way that you're going to use it. So let's get started. This is just a little bit of code, won't take too long, and I hope you enjoy the movie. So Microsoft is a large behemoth. It's a big company. It's been around a long time, 40 years. And so you've got to think about their position here, because what's happening here is they've got old legacy products. They continue to innovate, come up with new products, but people have gotten used to the old stuff, and so Microsoft needs to carry it forward. For example, Control Panel can still be found in Windows 11, even though it's been around clear back in the old Windows 95, for crying out loud. It's been around a long time. And so what we have here is a problem where Microsoft has to maintain the old, but they also have to wean us over to the new. And if I'm going to grouse a little bit here, and I apologize for this, but in 2004, I was nominated as a Microsoft Most Valuable Professional. I had written a bunch of study guides for Microsoft certification exams. And so I fly into Redmond, and it was a big deal. And you go to this area, this huge stadium where they're going to have all this. And what happens is Steve Ballmer, who happened to be the big guy at Microsoft at the time, I don't know if you've ever been to one of these things, but it's a huge deal. Fog machines, jumbotrons, music is at an all-time high volume. They have a DJ that announces, and here is Steve Ballmer, like that. And he comes out on the stage, it's all a big thing. And there's maybe, 2,000 of us MVPs sitting there. And I was really astonished. There was a young man near the front, and he raises his hand. So Ballmer's speaking, and he raises his hand. And Ballmer's like, you know what, you should be listening. You could almost hear what he was thinking. You should be listening to me and not asking questions. But I guess he was a gentleman. He answered the guy. He goes, yes, can I help you? And the guy goes, I want to know when you're going to decide. And Ballmer goes, decide what? And he says, decide when you're going to land on one photo editing app, because there were 2 or 3 in Windows at the time in 2004. Well, Ballmer reaches in, grabs his wallet, pulls out a bill, I don't know if it was a 20 or whatever, gives it to the kid, and he goes, look, that's the best idea I've had all year. So the nature of this gig is that they have to keep up, but they also have to support legacy products. Now, I'm showing you my taskbar here, and you can see on the screen I have PowerShell here. I have the command prompt, which is old. This is the thing that you saw back when you were running the disk operating system, MS-DOS, way back in the day. The command prompt was it. But it's been ported into Windows. It's still there. It's still out there as a thing. And then there's a new thing called Windows Terminal. So you can get these things. Let me show you. I'm going to click the Start button and go to the Microsoft Store. And I'm going to look for PowerShell. And you can see that I've got a bunch of choices with PowerShell here. There's somebody searched for PowerShell 7, Windows PowerShell, which is what they've renamed it to, the PowerShell app, PowerShell preview. So if I go to PowerShell and hit enter, the apps that show up are PowerShell, which I happen to have installed, even though it says Get, which is pretty funny. I've got this PowerShell preview, which I have no idea what that is. And then I have this thing called the Windows Terminal, which I have installed. So there's at least 2 variations on a theme here. There's PowerShell, there's the Windows Terminal, but there is also the command prompt. So here's what the command prompt looks like. So that's really kind of cool. And I've already adjusted these settings. That's what I want to show you, is how to adjust the settings. And so if I run PowerShell here, I'm going to right-click and run PowerShell. I have the choices to run it as administrator, as a thing called the Integrated Script Editor, ISE. Run ISE as an administrator. I'm going to show you that in another video, how to use ISE. And then you've got the Windows PowerShell ISE, and I'm not sure what the difference is between those two. And then you've got Windows PowerShell. So I'm going to run this thing as administrator. This is UAC, User Account Control. Used to be that you could turn this off. I'm sure you still can. I don't think you should. I like UAC a lot. You know, I used to militate against it, but now I'm okay with it because it's stopping some malicious activity from happening. So I click yes. And then I come up here and I've got this nice, beautiful blue screen. Well, how did I get here? So the first thing I want to show you is that if I right-click, I go to Properties, I get a Properties sheet here. And this is the Windows PowerShell Properties sheet. Now, I have the choice of cursor size, medium. I have the font, and I've deliberately picked a little bit bigger font. So I picked Cascadia Mono semi-bold. Mono means all the letters are monospaced. By the way, studying fonts, a typology class, you should definitely take a typology class at some point in your career because understanding fonts and how they work is really, really huge in this industry. So I've got a 36-point font because I want you to be able to see it on the screen. I could actually even enlarge it by typing in a different size. Layout is interesting. So layout is just controlling the size of the screen. I don't think I care too much about it, so I never really fiddle with it. If you liked even numbers, you could even this up or whatever. My layout, my colors are what I'm really interested in. So I've got the screen text here. Let me select that. Now, on the right-hand side here is selected color values. You're looking at what is called red, green, blue, RGB, and each one of these are an 8-bit byte. So RGB consists of 3 8-bit bytes in that order. Red is the first, green is the second, blue is the third, and they go in numbers from 0 to 255. So 255 means maximum red, maximum green, maximum blue, which is what I have here. The result of that is white. So white is the presence of all color, and you can see on the screen here that there's a little tiny indent, a little shadow there, which is telling me that I have pure white enabled as my font color. I could select a different font color. I could play around with this. For example, if I go to a more toned down white, it would change the RGB colors. Well, what if I wanted a straight red font, which I don't because I'm red-green colorblind and blue-purple colorblind, so I have a really hard time seeing red on a black screen, which is the default for PowerShell. And I'm going to browse here a little bit more. Microsoft talks a lot about accessibility. So like when you open Excel or Word and you drag or PowerPoint, you drag a picture onto there, they want you to add what's called the alternative text, the alt text. What that's for is for people that are using a screen reader to listen to what's going on the screen because they can't see it. And I'm fine with that. I do fill in alt text values, but Microsoft isn't thinking about colorblind people at all because they default to a red font on a black screen, which is very, very difficult for me to read. I've got to be honest with you. Anyway, so I have the screen text set to white, 255, 255, 255 RGB. Now, by the way, it's the same in hex, except hex is 2 decimal. So if I was going to do red, green, blue in hex, 255 in hex is foxtrot, foxtrot. It's FF, Floyd, Floyd. If I set hex foxtrot, 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 that is white. It's the same thing. And by the way, when you have all 3 colors the same, you're essentially looking at some shade of gray. So in this case, white is a very, very, very light gray. But if you saw, say, 12, 12, 12, that is a darker gray. So that's what you got there. And also, screen text is synonymous with the term font color, which is synonymous with the term foreground color. So foreground color equals font color equals text color. And they're using RGB here, and I do not know why they don't have a hex setting in there as well, but it matters not. My screen background is going to be blue, and this is pure blue, and you can see that the RGB has changed to 0, 0, all blue. So this is a nice, beautiful blue, and it's selected right there. Then I have pop-up text, which I want to be, my text should be black, so I'm going to change this to black. So I'm going to go 0, tab, 0, tab, 0. And I want to look at black on a green screen. So text equals foreground colors equals font color. My background color I want to be green, and that's right here. So if I select the text, there's black. If I select this, there's green. Click OK. Everything's groovy, and it did not change. I'm going to show you that in just a minute why that's the case. Now, by right-clicking the bar here, you can go to Properties to get the Properties sheet back. This is only good for PowerShell version 5. It's good for the command prompt, and it's good for PowerShell version 5. But Microsoft has evolved forward, and they've gotten into a one-stop shopping environment where you can change the settings for everything using a thing called Windows Terminal. So that's what we want to look at next. I should also show you that if you click the icon to the upper left here and go to Properties, you're going to get the same property sheet. It's exactly the same thing. So that looks fine. There's no problem there at all. Now that is PowerShell. So I want to talk to you real quickly about how the old PowerShell worked so that you know. Now there are some environment variables. PowerShell has several of them. Windows has a bunch of environment variables. What are those? These are variables that are embedded into the system in such a way that they just automatically go get a value. So in PowerShell, you've got a variable. You start with a $, and you type in profile, like that. $profile is a PowerShell environment variable, and it tells you where my profile is kept at. And the profile is kept right here. C:users W held. I have OneDrive turned on. I'm not happy about that, but I've got it turned on. Documents, Windows PowerShell. Look at this file name, Microsoft.PowerShell_profile.ps1. The extension PS1 means that this is a PowerShell script. So you can write PowerShell scripts for version 5 of PowerShell. Now I created a table in Word so that you can see what these are. This is specific to 5. PowerShell 7 is different. There's a difference there, and I know you're wondering where did PowerShell 6 go, and I think it's on the beach with TCP/IP version 5, and they've just decided they're not going to come back. I don't know what to tell you. So we're dealing with PowerShell 5, PowerShell 7. We are currently talking about PowerShell 5 profile script locations. Take a look. Now we have to differentiate between the current user, which is me, and the current host, which is my computer. When we say the word host, what we're talking about is a device basically that can have a TCP/IP address, but in this case we're talking about a Windows host, and so we're saying that it lives in $home documents. Well, let's find out what this is. A PowerShell environment variable. Let's find out what that is. So if I come up here and I type in $home and hit enter, it says, oh, I'm in users W held. So that's $home. So now let's go back and look at the Word doc. So it's saying $home documents. The command to open this is going to be profile. So let's do profile, and you can see up here when I type in profile, it's saying set it to home documents Windows PowerShell. They've renamed that from PowerShell to Windows PowerShell, and then they're referencing this PS1 file, Microsoft.PowerShell_profile PS1. So let me bring up this Word doc again. There is another one. So current user all hosts, meaning I'm a user. There's a thing in Windows called a roaming profile. So the concept would be you've got a person that has to go to a bunch of different geographic locations or sites. They need to log on. They want to see the same profile they see at the home side, that kind of an idea. So there's this notion of what's called a roaming profile. And when that user goes from here to, say, Germany or Tokyo, they need to be able to get on a computer, a different host, if you will, and they need to be able to pull up that same PS1 file. So that exists as home documents PowerShell profile. Now it's missing the Microsoft.PowerShell profile PS1. It just says profile PS1. And so this is profile current user all hosts. There's one called all users current host. What does that mean? Well, let's say that you have a company and you have first, second, and third shift, right? And we're sharing the computer. So Bob goes home for the day. Susie comes in. She's on second shift, logs on. Now she's a new user on the current host. And this is called PS Home. Well, let's go look at that. So I'm going to put in $PS Home. And this is a brand new PowerShell environment variable. And it's pointing to a completely different location. Windows System 32, Windows PowerShell version 1. And so if I look back at this, it says, oh, and it's going to be PS Home Microsoft.PowerShell1 _ profile.ps1, and I can get at it using profile.allUsers current host. And then finally, there's this notion of all users and all hosts. They go to PS1. Again, we take off the Microsoft.PowerShell _ and we're left with just profile.ps1, and that's profile.allUsers all hosts. Let's try those just to see if they work. So I'm going to move this out of the way. So I'm going to type in just $profile, which you've seen already, and it points to the thing that we wanted it to point to, which is Windows PowerShell Microsoft.PowerShell _ profile.ps1. So let's look at .profile. In fact, I'll just use my up arrow. Current user all hosts, like that. So this is me. I can go to any host. That profile is called profile.ps1, but it's still in OneDrive Documents Windows PowerShell. So OneDrive makes it kind of cool, because if I'm a OneDrive user and I'm Joe Blow to Microsoft, I log on to Microsoft anywhere in the world, I can get my OneDrive stuff and it's going to ship this profile with. So that's actually kind of cool. I kind of like that idea. And you can kind of see how Microsoft was doing battle with the notion of, well, gosh, what if Joe goes from, LA to Tokyo to Germany, wherever he wants to log in? How do I give him that .ps1 file? And it's done through this sort of an idea here. Well, we've got all users current hosts, so I'll type in all users current host. Now this is all users on this host, this computer, and that's just, there is no profile. Did I misspell that? All users current host. Oh, I shouldn't have done this current user thing here. Let me get rid of that. All users current host, boom, and it's pointing to, look at this, Windows System 32 PowerShell version 1 Microsoft.PowerShell _ profile.ps1. Is it really version 1 of PowerShell? I don't know, because I'm dealing with PowerShell 5, PowerShell 7. Microsoft, again, is confused about version numbers. This isn't new. They've been confused about version numbers before. And then there's this all users, all hosts, like this. So I go all hosts, and that's even in a different location. It is now no longer Microsoft.PowerShell _ profile.ps1. It's just profile.ps1. Are you confused? Well, let me add some more confusion to the list here. First of all, there's a command where you can find out what PowerShell version you're using. And again, it's an environment variable, $PS version, and then you put a dot operator in there. It was PS version table dot PS version. Let's find out what I'm currently using. I'm using version 5 minor build 1, which does not jive with version 1.0. I kind of think, if I'm being honest with you, Microsoft is like, look, we're going to change from being PowerShell to being Windows PowerShell. Why? Because, well, they've ported PowerShell to Unix, which is why it'll work on a Mac. Mac uses a Unix version called Darwin Unix, so it works on the Mac just fine. They've also ported it to Linux, and in this case we're saying, well, we're dealing with Windows PowerShell. Now there's another command you can use. I'm going to clear the screen here because it's getting a little busy. There's another command that you can use. You can use a command called test path, and then you can pipe in your environment variable profile. Let's see if that's enabled. Now it says true. Well, why is that? Well, because there is a PowerShell script on my computer that is driving all of these policies here. Let's go look at that script. I'm going to navigate to cd2 users wheld OneDrive and hit enter. Do an ls to see what's out there. And there is, there's documents. So I'm going to clear the screen and cd into documents. ls. There's a bunch of documents. There's Windows PowerShell. So I'm going to clear the screen. I'm going to cd into Windows PowerShell. And again, Microsoft is not case sensitive. Yay, that's a good thing. Here I am, ls. And there's that file. So that's the Microsoft.PowerShell_profile.ps1. You can edit that bad boy. So what you can say is notepad, and you can notepad just profile, like so, and it will open up the notepad and show you the colors that are currently set. These are PowerShell 5 colors. They're not going to work in Windows Terminal. I'll show you that in a minute. A hashtag means that you're declaring a comment in PowerShell. And so this is just a comment. We're going to change the text color, i.e. font color, background color, font color or foreground color. So this would be the foreground color. Right here is the font color. I'll put a enter here, and I'll put in a hashtag here, a font color. So we're changing the font color to white, the background color to blue, which is what you're seeing here. And then I'm changing the error foreground color to black because I have a really hard time seeing red on black. And then I move the error background color to green, and then we have a command here, clear host. So I close the screen, save the changes. That's how you look at the profile, and it's very easy to do. However, if you decide that you want to download Windows Terminal, Terminal has changed all of this. So let me show you what this looks like. I'm going to close this window here. I'm going to right click and open up Terminal. I've got to get this recording bar out of the way. And you can see when I right click Windows Terminal here, I have a bunch of choices. I've got Windows PowerShell, the command prompt. Oh, take a look here. Azure Cloud Shell. What is that? Well, Microsoft is an enormous cloud provider. They're second only to Amazon Web Services. And so their cloud instance is called Azure. They call their cloud environment Azure. If you're in Europe somewhere, you might call it Azure. I've heard it titled Azure before, but I think it's just a way of trying to be Microsoft cool. Anyway, Azure. And then you've got your terminal here. And so I can adjust all of the settings using Windows Terminal and make it flow across all of the different environments, which is kind of cool if you think about it, because maybe today I want to use PowerShell, tomorrow I just want to use the command prompt. Oh, I've got something going on Azure. I want to use Azure. So I'm going to open up PowerShell here now. I'm going to click Yes to UAC. Here's PowerShell. It looks the same way as it did before. I'm going to go ahead and bring that back because it just wanted to dock elsewhere and make it go full screen. All right, now when you do that, when you launch from Windows Terminal, you can right-click this bar here and go to Settings. It's a completely different group of settings. This is kind of cool. So your default profile is going to be for Windows PowerShell. So what you're saying here is I am currently adjusting the profile for Windows PowerShell. The default terminal application, I can let Windows decide. I guess that's an okay thing, or you could force it to do something else. The language is the default language, the system language. And so you've got all of these settings here, but this isn't where I wanted to go to. I wanted to show you the other sections. So here's startup section, interaction section, automatically copy selection to clipboard. That's kind of cool. I might want to turn that on for PowerShell. I like that a lot. Text formats to copy to the clipboard. Well, the clipboard is in plain text, so I guess that's okay. Snap window resizing to character grid. Remove trailing white space when pasting. Detect focus pane on mouse hover is turned off. There's a lot of cool stuff here. Automatically detect URLs and make them clickable. That sounds like a good hacking maneuver there for me. Warn when closing more than one tab. So you can see what you got going here. We've got some word delimiters here. These are going to match largely the HTML stuff. Now this is where I wanted to go. Appearance. Use Windows theme. Now you notice here that they're doing away with some themes. So they're doing away with dark. They're doing away with light. Using Windows theme is going to be legacy. But here's use Windows theme. Now I also have color schemes. This is really interesting to me. You can see now that I have, first of all, on the bottom right hand side of the screen, I've got a save and a discard changes button. On my appearances, I don't have a lot of settings here. It's currently set to Campbell PowerShell, but I think what I'm going to do is set this to 1/2 light, like so. And I'm liking this because my foreground color is a bright black. Red is considered bright red, so these are names that they're adding to this. Green is bright green. Yellow is bright yellow. Blue is bright blue. Purple is bright purple. Cyan is bright cyan. And I'm going to set this color scheme as my default. So I click the Set as Default. I click the Save button. Now that's all done. Well, what happens if you don't like any of those profiles, those color settings, etc.? What can you do? Now I'm in Windows Terminal here. I'm going to right-click the top of the bar here and select Settings. There's my settings. Remember that you can adjust these settings for the Windows PowerShell, for the command prompt, for Azure Cloud Shell. I don't know, it might be fun if you could snap in, say, AWS, what do they call that? AWS command shell or whatever. You can actually shell out to AWS from your local computer. I don't know if that can be included here or not. I kind of doubt it. Anyway, I'm going to go to Appearance here, and I'm going to go, excuse me, to the themes. Excuse me, I'm going to go to Color Schemes here, like where we were before. And right now I have, I think I had 1/2 light selected. It defaulted back to Bill's color scheme, which I renamed. But I'm going to add a new one, and I'm going to put in my colors here. So I'm going to click Add New, and you can see on the left-hand side you have this generic box called Colors, and you've got the defined colors listed here. So there are different shades of colors. If you point at them, they're going to show you the RGB value for those particular colors, which is kind of cool because it's a good way of finding out what the RGB values here are. And this is my way of proving to you that whenever you see RGB all of the same number, that you're getting a shade of gray. So here's a very, very dark gray, almost black. Here's a little bit lighter gray. It's still a dark gray. Here's a dark red, 195, 1531. And here's a lighter red. So that's the idea there. They're showing you the different ideas, the RGB values around the colors. But now here's my color set here. Here's what I want to do. I want to change these colors. So I want my foreground color. I'm going to click here first. It's currently white. I'm going to select this, and I really like this because what's happening here is you have a bunch of new choices. So you don't have to go with just RGB. You can go with other color choices. Now in this case, my foreground color I want to be white anyway, so that's fine by me, but I want it to be on a blue screen. But I did want to take this time to show you that in white, RGB is 255, 255, 255. In hex, it is foxtrot, 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 foxtrot. And you even have a new thing called HSV. Let me go back there. Click this drop down here. That's hue, saturation, and variation, or volume, whatever it is. This is commonly used by graphic designers. It's based on percentages, so it's a color wheel percentage is what's going on there. It's really cool. Most of the people that are in straight IT aren't going to be winding up using HSV. There might be some that do, but RGB or hex are generally your preferred. But I think it's exciting to know that Microsoft is supporting HSV now. And it used to be called HSB, hue, saturation, and brightness, but it's been changed to this V letter here. So we could alter this by just simply keying in hex or keying in an RGB color. Let's see about that. So my background now, my foreground, my font color is going to be white, but my background color I want to be blue. Well, let's see what blue might be. I'm going to use hex here. So blue is 0 red, 0 0, and it's RGB, red, green, blue, so it's 0 green, 0 0, and all blue, which is foxtrot, foxtrot. Now if you look here on the left hand side of the screen here, you can see that it has changed to 00255, hex is 0000, foxtrot, foxtrot. I don't know what happens if I select HSV. There you go, hue, saturation, and value. It's the same idea. So this is really cool because it means Microsoft has brought this thing into the graphical design age, which I like a lot. So I'm going to click here. Now I've got my foreground and background colors. I'm going to change my cursor color. I'm going to make it a green. And my green is going to be, if you do full on green like RGB, like if you do 00, foxtrot, foxtrot, 00, you get a ghastly, bright shade of green. That's not exactly where I want to go. That's not exactly what I'm looking for. So I'm going to drag this slider over. And what happens is Microsoft shows you what it is you're looking at, and it varies the green from green to dark green. See how it's doing that? It goes from green to dark green. I kind of like this grass green look here because I like green an awful lot, and because I like grass an awful lot. Not the kind you smoke, the kind you mow. Never mind. Okay. And so I've got 0, 204, and blue. So that's my selection background here, or my cursor color here. My selection background, meaning when I draw, my mouse over something, I'm going to change that to a little bit different color. And so I don't know if you could like drag one of these over like a cyan. Here's a light cyan. I don't know. Yeah, you can't place that there. But what I could do is use that. So I could point to it, 97, 214, 214. I'll do that. I'll do 97. Now one problem that I have is if I tab, it doesn't fill in. Like normally when you hit the tab, it'll make everything highlighted in that block. This is, I think, a mistake on Microsoft's part, but I'm not going to get on them for that. But anyway, you have to actually literally pay attention and fill that in. And the hex for this light cyan is 61 delta 6 delta 6. There you go. Okay. Now I'm going to set this bad boy as my color default. So I set as default. I'm going to rename this color scheme. I'm going to call it, instead of color scheme 14, BB's color scheme. And click save like that. Boom. And save. And now we've got that. So I hope this movie was helpful. This is just all about figuring out the craziness that's going on with PowerShell updating from one version to another, Microsoft is behind the scenes changing the tools so that they function a little bit different way and they look a little bit differently. There's some good stuff going on here, so I like that a lot. And you know what? If you're liking these movies, love it if you would share these movies out with other people. Tell them about these movies. I'm trying to grow this channel. I'm not trying to get rich on the channel. I just really enjoy teaching, and I enjoy sharing stuff like this with you guys. And if you would subscribe to the channel, and you know what? I hope you have a really great day, and I will talk to you in the next video. Thanks for watching.